Today's video is going to break down the two different saber scores for MMA DFS contests and how I determine when to use each version. My name is Andrew and I'm one of the coaches over here at SaberSim. Let's jump right in. Jumping into a build I ran before we got started here, first thing we want to do is look at the two variations of SaberScore, and then we'll break down why it's important to know the difference. So the first option is MMA Sim Diversity 10, and the second option is called MMA Default. The important thing to know here is that you should be using MMA Sim Diversity 10 with all builds that you run that use Sim Diversity 10, and all builds that are run with Sim Diversity 9 or lower, you should be using MMA Default. Before we go any further, it's important to understand what Sim Diversity 10 is. If we go to the build settings, we can see our two sliders, correlation and Sim Diversity. Correlation is not going to be important for MMA unless allow opposing fighters is turned on, and generally you want this turned off. You do not want to roster two fighters from the same fight unless it is a very small card here. But the important thing is that at Sim Diversity 10, what we're doing is, to back up even further, we have thousands of simulations of each fight on the slate. This was a 14 fight card, so we have a couple thousand simulations for how each fight could play out. What Sim Diversity 10 does, it takes one single instance, one single simulation from each fight, groups them all together to create a slate simulation. We run that slate simulation, and then we build you the optimal lineup from that slate simulation that had one simulation of each fight on the slate. At Sim Diversity 9, we're doing something similar, but instead of just using one simulation, we are using multiple simulations. We are using a group of simulations for each fight and then seeing how the players scored on average over those set of fights. So say we might take 3 fights and then get the average projection that each fighter scored from the 3 fights and then build you the optimal lineup from that set of simulations. When we run builds on Sim Diversity 10, you're going to get this summary statistic underneath your lineups called Sim Optimals. What Sim Optimals is basically when we are simulating the fight and we are taking one simulation from each fight, it is possible that the same combination of fighters shows up in the winning lineup more than once. However, we cannot put one lineup into your pool twice. So what we do is we end up tallying how many times each fighter combination shows up, and then we use that as a metric when grading your lineups. So in theory, if a combination of fighters is showing up very often, then that set of fighters has a good win probability for your contest, so it's more likely that you want to play that lineup. So if you come into our SaberScore drop downs, you click this little eye icon. This will allow you to see the SaberScore formula that we are using to grade your lineups. And from this Sim Diversity 10 metric here, you can see that it has 3 variables: Sim Optimals, Sum Projection, and then it has a negative weight on average adjusted ownership. So basically, lineups that have a higher ownership are being taxed more, are being hurt more, and lineups with a lower ownership are being hurt less. So this helps you to get different from the field by accounting for ownership. If we come over here to this Sim Diversity 9 build that I ran, and really quickly, if you guys ever want to rename your builds, all you have to do is just click this little pencil icon and give it a new name, whatever makes sense to you here. But getting back to the video, if we come over to this lineup, we will see that there is no Sim Optimals summary statistic. Therefore, we cannot use that as part of a grading metric. So if we go over to this MMA Default SaberScore here, click on the eye icon, we're going to see that the 3 variables here are Sum Projection, 99th percentile, and then the negative weight on average adjusted ownership. So no Sim Optimals variable in this metric. Instead, we are using the 99th percentile of the lineup. Lastly, you can come into your build settings here and see what type of contest SaberSim is saying Sim Diversity 10 is needed for and which ones it is not. So the single entry 1 to 10K entrance is Sim Diversity 9, and then if we go to 20 max, 10 to 50K, we're going to see that we bump up to Sim Diversity 10. So each version of this Sim Diversity of these Saber scores are going to be useful in different scenarios in different contest types overall. Before we get out of here, I feel like I've mentioned average adjusted ownership a couple times throughout this video. I'm not going to break down what that is here, but if you're looking for more information on that, there's going to be a link to a support video in the description of this video. And as always, if you guys have any questions about anything we covered today, you can always reach us at support@sabersim.com. Thank you.